starting down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player. He is none other than Litecoin's Hellraiser.
And that, of course, means that in the top left side of Romanta's side, we're looking at the main base of the man who is representing the Berserker Esports. It's the one and only man that always gets the shoutouts. It's a souL.
Kev, I feel like if somehow souL doesn't end up fulfilling our predictions and everything, if he ends up losing this series, doesn't advance out of the groups or something, I think we just need to make a general pact as a community to just start underestimating souL, because that's truly the only way he'll succeed at that point, I feel like.
I mean, when I think of souL, I will always think of the time that he eliminated Stats from the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice. But then he didn't actually qualify for the main event because he lost the round after that. And I think that is really kind of almost resembling for his entire career. But souL definitely had his moments. He had a couple of decent runs here and there. We just know that he is capable of a little bit more than he's shown so far in some of the biggest online events we've had, especially in the Corona times, of course.
Yeah, souL really is like the kind of player. And I can't. Maybe you and your insane memory will think of an actual instance of something like this, but he is the kind of player that you expect will go into a group stage and he'll beat souL, but potentially not advance out of the group or something. He's like that kind of player where it's like there's so much potential, but it's just always about can souL like realize it and kind of live up to a lot of the potential that we always hear about from all the practice games and stuff that he plays in.
Yeah, I mean, we do see it every now and then because it's not like souL shows up and he goes 0-7 or something, right? Like that will never happen. But he definitely just has a few losses here and there that he shouldn't have. And then even early into the playoffs, it happened a couple of times that souL just couldn't really show what he's made of. I do want to say, though, we're talking a lot about souL. Hellraiser's had a very interesting journey in the DreamHack Masters fall because Hellraiser was actually 2-0 down in his qualifying match for this event. I believe it was against Soul Spirit, a French Dirk. So Hellraiser had to win 3 games in a row to even make it to this event in the first place. And now 6 playdays afterwards, or this is playday 7, he's actually still in the running for the playoffs. And that's quite wild too, right? Because normally the guys, they barely make it into the actual event. And they're going to have a tough time in the group stage. But Hellraiser has really stepped it up. And I think that's something he can be proud of.
Yeah, Hellraiser's been a very interesting player to watch over the past few years because I think he's, during WC's Challenger, like back in 2018 or 2019, he did kind of have some nice little breakout performances. I remember very famously, like, really winning a lot of fans as he actually ended up beating Showtime when Showtime was like in peak condition and doing really well in PvP specifically. Hellraiser was able to beat him there. And I feel like he's really solidified himself as like one of those mid-range European Protoss players. But it is just about finding ways to break through that kind of mid-ish area of Europe. That's so tough for a lot of these European Protoss players to do.
Talk a little bit about these strategies, because souL's opening up with 2 Hellions, and he's going to follow it up with a 4 Widowmine drop by the looks of it. Hellraiser is opening up with Phoenixes, but he's opening up Phoenix Robo, which almost gives me the idea that he's worried about some very quick Cloaky mines, or the Cloaky boys as I like to call them, but there is no armory. So I don't think he had to be super concerned about this. This can really only ever go into Phoenix Colossus, because if you would drop a Twilight now, it's just kind of awkward and it takes so long for Charge to finish up. So both of them have been quite blind. I gotta say, this is actually not easy to defend, even with Phoenix's Fear Dragon, because you don't have that many lifts available. These are 4 mines, but let's see how Hellraiser... This all? Oh, he only has 2 mines. What?
Yeah, one of the mines is missing somewhere. It looks like the Phoenix absorbs one of the hits, and a second medevac loads up the 3rd and 4th Widow mine. Now, the Hellions are going to come on forward, but it's not like the Widow mine softened up any of the probes or anything like that. Like, Hellions are going to have a hard time getting a lot of damage done. So far, we've seen a single probe killed in exchange for 2 Widow mines, a medevac, and 2 of the Hellions.
The one downside is that Hellraiser doesn't have like super quick 3 bases, and he's going for a robo base. So this is not one of these games where it's like, oh no, the Terran is in trouble because they didn't do economic damage. Nah, this is solid for Hellraiser, but he needs to stay solid. Can he lift in time? 1 out of 2.
Yeah. finds one additional worker over there. I think, no, two additional workers in the end. Loses the medevac and the widow mines again, though. I don't know, Kev. Is that... I agree with what you're saying in the sense that this is a later third base and stuff for Hellraiser compared to like some of the faster thirds and stuff you can take, but losing two medevacs and all four mines does hurt, right?
Absolutely. It is by no means good for souL. It's not like, wow, I'm so happy that I decided to go for Hellions and Widow Mines because I killed two probes. All of that is not good. But if you just look at the numbers and you don't take into consideration what has happened up to this point, Hellraiser's at 50 probes, souL's at 48 SCVs. That's good for Terran. souL has double eBay finishing up. Hellraiser doesn't even have a forge. souL is getting tanks, very good against Colossus. And on top of that, the third command center is finishing up, while the third Nexus is now finishing up. It is really not that bad for souL, and that is only because Hellraiser decided to build the Robo Bay before he decided to expand. If Hellraiser would have done all the same things, but then instead of taking the extra gases and the Robo Bay before this Nexus, but he would have taken the Nexus first, then I think it'd be real bad for souL. Now it's actually perfectly playable, I think.
So let me ask you something, Kev. In this situation, as souL has gotten a lot of scouting information and everything off of what was happening with the drops, do you go and prioritize making medevacs or Vikings in this? Because you've lost all of your medevacs. You have literally zero medevacs, but you also know that your opponent's going for these fast Colossus pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think if I'm souL, I'm going to do what I like to do anyway if I would be souL, and that is just do nothing. It's a bit annoying because we know that Terran players like to be out and about on the map. They like to drop, they like to let their multitasking shine. But sometimes against certain strategies, the best thing you can do is nothing. And that is honestly one of the scenarios that souL is in right now. Just try not to lose too many SCVs against these Phoenixes. It is inevitable that you're going to lose a few here and there. But just try to grab the occasional Phoenix. I don't think I'd ever move out before I have Ghost and 2-2.
Yeah. Cyclone staying very much so on the defensive posture over there, ready for the Phoenix to dive on back in. And so far, yeah, I feel like, you know, nothing says defensive play like two bunkers and siege tanks behind them with a supply depot wall, Kev.
Yep, I mean, a lot of Terrans hate being forced to play like this, and that's why they kind of hate the Phoenix in general. I don't think souL is too far out of his comfort zone. He's like, oh man, I actually find myself in these scenarios more often than not. So yeah, all you can do is just try to make sure that you're on top of your STV production, make sure that you don't forget any important upgrades. Hellraiser just lost his Observer because he flew it in the range of the missile turret. It's a little bit sloppy. This kind of STV harass is nice, but it's really not as impactful as it may seem, because souL is on 63 STVs triple orbital, right? Like, what are 3-4 STVs really going to do losing those here? Honestly, not much.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to do, just keep an eye on your opponent to get little bits of free damage, as long as it is still, you know, remaining free damage. You're not slacking on anything else behind it. Hellraiser gonna try and get up his Templar Archives as well as he finishes up that +1 weapon, so should be able to start up some more of those upgrades. But he is also just trying to tech up a bit, but he's also investing into, like, for example, a lot of the cannons, getting up some shield batteries and stuff. He's actually getting ready to deal with harassment and stuff, potentially.
I'm a bit sad that souL has not started +2 attack and +2 armor, because these upgrades have been done a little while. The armory is up and running, because he's even getting +1 for his tanks. So I kind of feel like he should have started his 2-2 bio upgrades, and there he goes with +2. But that could have honestly been almost halfway done. Hellraiser seems to be gearing up for these traditional Phoenix, Colossus, couple Zealots, and an Arkham attack. If souL spreads himself thin over 4 bases, maybe there is an opportunity. But since the Ghosts are already out, these Archons are not that impactful. And these Phoenixes, 2 of them going down and 1 of them very low on HP. I really don't hate it for souL as long as he knows that this random attack is coming. And look at Hellraiser. Fleet Beacon, second Stargate. Might get to carry a Disruptor action here.
Yeah, all in all, even though, yes, we did have a bit of that harassment in the early stage of the game, and the Phoenix have been kind of poking and prodding here and there, both of these players have not really lost all that much. It's been very much focused on just macro, and we're getting even more doubling down into just later stage gameplay. And a couple more Phoenix are going down over there. But at the end of the day, both these players are very content to sit back, get up their 4th or even, you know, potentially 5th base now, and just, yeah, say I'm better at late game than you are.
I'm actually a bit concerned for Hellraiser because he has 94 probes at this point, which means that his maxed out army is really not going to be very good. It's going to be 106 supply at best, and on top of that, he's now getting Tempest. I thought he would maybe go Carriers first, but apparently he wants to go Tempest. I actually think that if souL just controls his army properly, there are some extra starports going down, by the way. I really think there's a lot of potential in this Terran army. And I think Hellraiser is going to have a hard time not winning a fight, because I really don't see that ever happening. But I even see him having a hard time just trading out.
It's going to be very difficult to find reasonable ways to trade out for sure. We're going to see a couple more gateways being thrown down. Double forge on top of the one forge that I think he already has. So maybe thinking about getting a handful more upgrades, or maybe actually just forgetting that he already had a forge.
souL going full souL and building 4 command centers at once. Despite the fact that nothing has happened in minutes in this game, souL does manage to squeeze 8 Marines to the other side of the map. He is going to fly away. Obviously, these medevacts should eventually get picked off because the Phoenix count is still high. I mentioned battle cruises in the beginning of the game. At first I was joking, but I'm starting to believe that it's a real possibility we could get battle cruises.
How do you feel about the battlecruisers if there is the investment into those Tempests on the map?
I feel battlecruisers, if you can get them on 5 base plus economy, and you're building them at a time that you know you're never going to die, and you can get all the upgrades, battlecruisers are always a good choice.
All right, well, big Zealot run by, but this is kind of going back to what you were saying, Kev. It's very hard to trade out supply effectively here. And another big round of Zealot Warpins does come out as he starts to poke it at the front. But again, EMPs plus the Siege Tanks, this is through a choke point, not where Hellraiser wants to make the trades.
This is one of these games where we definitely want to keep a close eye on the units that lost the resource tab. At this point, Hellraiser lost like 1,000 resources more, and it's mostly just the Zealots he lost. But the moment he lost all those Zealots and did nothing, he's like 12 more Zealots. You gotta make sure that you don't get too carried away doing that kind of stuff.
Big siege over here from souL. He is going to scan and see that the army is moving on forward. A lot of these elves do manage to run in a bit further this time. He pulls back to try and get some more surface area, but the SCV's coming off the line to repair the planetary fortress to that AoE. Is it actually going to be able to survive?
The PF does go down, and now these Zealots may actually get their tanks. That's pretty funny, because 2 of the Zealots are incredibly low on HP. I think if SCVs would have been pulled, they would have probably won the fight. In the end, souL is going to bring over a couple of buy units. Feels like he could have done that a bit sooner. Hellraiser is now indeed going into Carriers and Disruptors. Incredibly strong against most things on the ground. What's the Viking count? 19? My goodness! Why does he have 19 Vikings? That's way more than I thought he had already.
Yep, that is going to be a very, very solid response to a big Sky Toss investment, but 5 carriers coming out at a time, and I have to say, as there is a nuke coming on out, we'll see if Hellraiser notices and reacts to this. Okay, there's the pull. Does find it pretty quickly. I was going to say, though, Hellraiser does have... It's not a massive bank, but you're talking about the resources lost. Hellraiser has also been expanding a little bit faster, and he does have a slightly larger bank than souL does.
The ghost could kill the cannon, but there is a carrier that's going to save the cannon for now. You know, sometimes it can be very deceiving when you play games like this, and you're like, oh, I'm maxed out, I should fight. But then you forget about the fact that 5 carriers are stuck in your Stargates, and then you're basically fighting with a really tiny army because you have so many probes to do. And you won't kill a unit, so it's really important you don't make that mistake. There is the Fusion Core, could obviously be for Liberators and Advanced Ballistics, but I really think there is a solid chance with those 4 extra starports going down that souL is going to make some battle cruises this game.
We'll have to wait and see. This is it's kind of a funny army for Hellraiser, which, I mean, absolutely makes sense, but it's such a small army in terms of surface area. It's actually like the easiest army ever to EMP. If you ever get 1 EMP off, it's probably going to hit the entire army. That is a little bit scary to me, Kev.
That sounds like every EMP to me, Fear Dragon.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
With the enhanced shockwaves, of course. Without, sure, you know, I can see someone miss. I see the Muslim miss. That's about it. With the upgrades, I think 1 EMP covers it all.
Well, that is potentially going to be a bit problematic because the Ghosts are on the front lines. EMPs go off on a good chunk of the army. Don't quite hit all of it just yet, but enough that the Vikings can start one-shotting some of these carriers now.
Yeah, Hellraiser is gonna have a really hard time winning a fight here, man. He's gonna be forced to really run into these turrets, and you're gonna lose a lot of interceptors. Phoenixes, they can do all right against Vikings, but obviously not in these numbers and not in these kinds of fights. Like the Phoenixes really benefit from just getting on top of the Vikings, and then maybe some Stalker Archon support. Maybe a Storm. Do we even have Storm? No, we don't have Storm. Seems like Hellraiser is not a believer. But if you go up against a million Vikings and battlecruisers, you may just not have a choice.
Yeah, it's not too different from going up against the big corruptor armies where they should start massacring your carriers that can't really run away and having something to start zoning them out, something to start forcing them to spread out and lose some of that DPS can really, really be valuable. Another Ghost sneaking on forward, looking for another nuke at this base. This nuke, if it lands, will finish off the cannon, I believe.
Yeah, probably. There's also a triple drop heading towards the top right side. I have the feeling that Hellraiser just kind of wants to fight. The probe pool is late. A lot of probes do go down, 9 of them in total. Obviously, Hellraiser can afford that. He is rich. There's triple drop in the top right side. Hellraiser can't actually recall towards the base in the top right. This could get really annoying, but he does have a mirroring gateways, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, the cannons and the shield batteries will try and buy a little bit of time, but focus fire down on some of the cannons and also the pylons. This looks like he's going to be able to open up the pathway into the actual mineral line. We see the big flood of the entire Protoss Death Ball heading up to the top right-hand side just to deal with that. I would love if souL also just paired this up with another attack on the bottom side as soon as he saw this very immobile army entirely focusing on the top right-hand side.
Yeah, but he's using it to create space for himself in the bottom left side. If Njal could just take a look at this planetary in the bottom left, take a look at the yellow submarine going to work. So that is what that drop has accomplished too. This really was a successful move, especially because souL doesn't even want to rebuild Marines and Marauders and Medevacts. What he wants to get are battle cruisers. I moved my statue a little bit closer because I was hopeful. Well, we are going to see some good old BCs and probably a lot of Yamato cannons.
Hashtag blessed. Nice EMP on the Nexus is going to remove the ability to recall over here, so it's no longer an option. Hellraiser just going to have to put up in with losing that base, but at this point, this is where I feel like all of the bases that have been taken are the bases that you're like, yeah, okay, I can take these. As soon as these like bottom and top center bases are where things start to get a little bit trickier. All of these center bases are a lot harder to keep open.
I'm a lot more worried about Hellraiser's win condition. It really feels that Hellraiser is used to Terran players that lose their patience and attack into his robo units and his Stargate units and cannons and static defenses, but souL ain't doing that. This is what souL loves to do. So Hellraiser really needs to start coming up with a plan to potentially win this. So far, it's not quite working out. This fight maybe is not going that bad, as the Vikings are starting to run quite low on HP. Nice micro dado by souL. souL's got one BC that he teleported to the bottom right side. Like we are 5 minutes into a Terran versus Zerg.
Oh, that artist. Okay, there are 2 pylons that are powering, I think, close to like 9 gateways. I think just get that pylon. Just get that pylon. Oh man, no, the Tempests are gonna come home.
Yeah, I don't think he's too concerned about powered gateways at this point. He's like, Hellraiser, if you want to make gateway units, go ahead and make gateway units. But like, souL is obviously not planning on winning this game in the next minute. This is not like, oh, let's get one attack and land an EMP and lose all my Vikings and battlecruisers. No, the longer this goes, the better it is for Terran in general, because they can obviously still mine a lot with the orbitals and they can spam mules. So souL can eventually get like 150 army supply plus, while Hellraiser is never going to have an army that big, and even if he does, it won't scale as well as the maxed out Terran army.
Well, Hellraiser is breaking through quite a few of these units. The Interceptor is absorbing a lot of the anti-air attacks over here. He's going to have to back off eventually. The Vikings starting to come forward, sniping off 1 or 2 of the carriers, and I believe an Archon or 2 also ends up dying over there. But the banks, though, were actually a little bit more in favor of souL at the beginning of that fight, starting to favor Hellraiser a tiny bit more again. Both these players have actually been depleting their banks a little bit more frequently than I would have thought.
I love how Hellraiser is like, you know what, I need a second robo. I don't really know why. Maybe he wants to start building 2 disruptors at a time. There is a nuke going down. I don't know if Hellraiser actually saw that or not. The missile turret count is, at this point, already too damn high. We're looking at 55 turrets on the map. At one point, StarCraft was building 18 at once. I'll be honest, I've had a similar game on this map a while ago against Goody. And at one point, I'm like, I'm done, Because I was like, this is just never gonna end. And even when it does end, it's not gonna end in my favor. Because I see that my opponent has 15 battle cruisers. StarCraft is currently already sitting on 11. I mean, Fear Dragon, what would you like to see Hellraiser do?
Oh boy, I mean, I think it's a really, really tough call. I'm not gonna lie, Kev. This is one of those situations as a Protoss player that I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure anymore. This is just it's really hard to come up with an answer that isn't just have insanely good control with your late game army and just micromanage and micro everything in the fight really, really well.
I actually think at this point, like, it's very important to keep a close eye on what the army composition of StarCraft is like. At this point, it's 6 Vikings, 12 BCs, and 11 Ghosts. I actually think the best army you can make against this is maxed out on Tempest. I actually think just pure Tempest is probably the best thing you can do. Carriers really are not as good as Tempest are against battle cruisers because the interceptors just don't deal enough damage. On top of that, they obviously build very slow, they move slow. I honestly say at this point, just hold the Tempest button down and make nothing but Tempest, and hope that StarCraft makes a boo-boo with his VCs.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea as a massive set of EMPs come off on all of the carriers over here. Yamato's going to be especially effective now, but all the ghosts end up dying as well. Oh no, StarCraft ends up losing all of his ghosts. It might end up losing a handful of the battlecruisers as well, as even the Tempests start coming on in. These are some really fantastic trades to start off with for Hellraiser, but now that the entire fleet has arrived, a couple of Yamatos do take their tax over here. I mean, a really good set of trades at the end of the day, though, still for Hellraiser.
Yeah, that was really good. StarCraft just took that fight a little too soon. It was kind of pointless because the PF was already dead. But then first he fought with like 2 battlecruisers, 6 Vikings, exposed all the ghosts, and then just much later, after all the ghosts were dead, most of the Vikings were gone, all the turrets were dead, that's when the additional BC showed up. It was just a little bit too late. Good job by Hellraiser realizing that he had done good enough and it's time to disengage. That was honestly very good for our Ukrainian Protoss, but I do think that StarCraft will have another chance at a similar fight and just handle everything a whole lot better.
Yeah, handful of stalkers that were warped in at the end of the fight are, I actually do like these kind of moves, where it's just the battlecruisers, like, by no way, shape, or form do the battlecruisers ever want to have to teleport forward to help deal with the stalkers, but losing all the stalkers like this is, I mean, it's bound to happen. Battlecruisers can move actually pretty quickly, but I like that, yeah, Hellraiser's still finding opportunities to just clean up missile turrets and stuff, finding ways to just chip around at these units that do take some time to move around the map is nice.
Next time it's 14 Vikings, 12 battlecruisers, and 8 Ghosts, as we do have another nuke landing at some of the static defense in the top right side. I do think that StarCraft realized where he messed up and that he can just take a much better fight in the future. If you fight an army that's maxed out, you probably don't want to engage with like 15% of your forces, then 20%, and then the rest. Like, that was just not an optimal way to go about it.
Absolutely. I think no disagreements here. We got 15 more missile turrets finishing on up. We have flux veins coming on out just in case he ever needs some of those void rays, observer speed, so that they can run into the missile turrets faster to die. And yeah, we got potentially another little fight gonna break out over here. Some nukes are coming forward, and not sure that the ghost has actually been spotted, but he should back off just because the army's over here, right? Right?
Yes.
Right, Kev?
Oh, his Tempests are hovering right above the red dot, and they do take a lot of damage, but in the end, they won't go down.
Oh my god.
It's actually kind of bad, though, because a lot of these Tempests are now permanently damaged, and that means that they are going to die a little bit quicker in future fights.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it just makes it even easier, right? I'm really afraid that
he's going for it.
Damage. Oh, to just get Yamato on out. The battlecruiser's teleporting right on top of all the carriers and the Tempest. Here come all the massive Yamatos. It looks like there just might be too many battlecruisers and Vikings, but the Stalker reinforcements might be able to actually help save the day here.
That's actually pretty sick. 23 gateways on the map for Hellraiser. He's going to warp in 23 Stalkers, and he's going to push all these battlecruisers back. I'm gonna say his Viking micro was a little bit derpy there. They were either shooting at interceptors or they were just moving around. They were definitely not right-clicked on Stargate units. But if it wasn't for those 23 gateways, that would have been a bad fight for Hellraiser. I gotta say though, a Ukrainian Protoss is definitely hanging in there and holding his own.
We finally have Storm coming as well, Kev, and it might be a very fitting time for it because that Stalker reinforcement is very mineral intensive. It's actually cost quite a few minerals to warp in 23 Stalkers. But the gas count is absolutely still there for Hellraiser. Remember, even the carriers actually end up using quite a few minerals just to replace the interceptors and everything. Having some gas available to just warp in a bunch of High Templars for both Storm and Archons, I really like that idea.
Yep. Goes going forward, landing another EMP. These Tempests are very...
Oh boy.
Yeah, Vikings just fight. I feel like often the Vikings are just flying around. They ain't actually fighting. I'm not sure if Hellraiser should really stick around here because he just lost the majority of his Tempest. And it feels like his actual army is very tiny. He is going to build 6 more Tempest after losing some supply. I think it's the correct choice. What I would like to see, Fair Dragon, is maybe a wall of shield batteries in the center of the map. Instead of like only fighting into the static defense of souL, maybe Hellraiser can give himself some static defenses to fall back to as well.
I actually really like that idea, especially since a lot of the time the way that souL is finding the trades is he is going for big EMP and then 3-second delay as the Yamato goes off. And if you have a bunch of those shield batteries there, at least some of the Tempests will start regenerating their shields, and they might not just get one shot or take as much damage from the Yamatos. So I think that could definitely pair really well together.
There are 72 missile turrets on the map.
There's about to be some more, Kev.
Yes, there are.
I love that, yes, the way also that he's sacrificing some of the SCVs is he's just using them on the front lines to build missile turrets. Like, the SCVs are actually gradually trading on out.
I love how in the bottom side we do have a little bit of a cannon versus missile turret standoff happening. A couple of random pilots. I feel like you can be a little more aggressive with your cannons. Maybe the cannons can just take down. We do have a little update of some of the things that have been happening. It seems like Lambo did end up losing his last series against settle. Seems like Marine Lord won his series. So I guess it all comes down to what's happening between Milky Cow and Shadone. As we have a decent nuke landing on a couple of probes on the top right side.
Yeah, definitely not too shabby there. And yeah, Milky Cow potentially might still be in it depending on the result of this series, which is still in game 1. So a lot still to decide over here. Ghost's going to be able to land another one of those nukes, but the big battle is where all of their attention is focused on. EMPs came out on the entire Sky Toss army, and Yamato's going to follow it up behind it. Looks at the end of the day, Hellraiser's bank is completely depleted in terms of minerals. And souL, well, he's going to be bleeding out a few battlecruisers on the retreat here.
Yep, carriers get EMP'd again. Stalkers are really just not good enough in these kinds of fights. The Vikings were not participating in the fight for a while. Now finally the Vikings do go forward. I would like to see souL be a little more adventurous with them, but it seems like souL just looks at this and is like, you know what? As long as I'm in no danger of dying, I think I will eventually win. Because this is costing you a little more than it's costing me. Which has not totally been true so far, but if you look at the armies that they're working with right now, it definitely feels that souL's army is just better than Stalkers and Archons. I mean, does that really win a war after 30 minutes?
Kev, I am looking at the gas available for souL. So I see the bottom left-hand side has like 600, 700 gas. I see the center-ish like high yield base has like 200 gas. So that's like maybe 1,000 gas. And then the top center is the one that has the most gas. That has like, I want to say another like 2,500 gas between them. But that's kind of it. souL's gas bank is already depleted as well. Literally just like in terms of Hellraiser's current gas available in his bank, he already has about as much as souL has left on the map.
Yeah, souL can take the top right side though. There is still 4,000 gas available in that base. And looking at where these turrets are going, I have a hard time believing that Hellraiser can eventually prevent souL from taking that base. As the armies are getting close to each other again, the ghost count is at 8. EMPs can really melt this army, and a couple of big EMPs do go down Yamato's land as well. And Hellraiser just dropped 50 supply, and I don't know if you saw it, Fear Dragon. I blinked and it was gone.
As the power of Yamatos and EMPs, another nuke also going to be able to zone out this army. And Yeah, if these missile turrets go up, Hellraiser is completely cut off from that top right-hand base. There's going to be a very, very difficult fight to try and get up over there to actually effectively defend that area. I think I just saw the shadow of the nuke coming forward, but get canceled at the last second. That was impressive.
Yeah, sure. souL actually did that 2 or 3 times there, and moving forward as well. This is a very weird fight for Archons and Stalkers. I don't really see this having a happy ending for the Protoss. And looking at these supplies, it definitely is not a happy ending. Stalkers just do not stand a chance against this many battle cruisers. There are 16 BCs on the map. There are 24 Stalkers. Well, that's not a very fair fight. And I kind of feel like this game is just going to end as a candle that's, I don't know, running out. Because I don't see a way for Hellraiser to win a fight. How is he going to win a fight?
I think he's just bled out too much at this point, and there's just not any avail. I mean, the Archons can't get close enough to actually do the AoE damage without just getting immediately evaporated by EMPs plus the battle cruisers. Vikings now land because there's not a Skytoss army to fight anymore. souL, more than double the supply of Hellraiser. Has he just gradually bled him out over the course of 30 minutes?
souL has just grinded his way to victory here in game 1. 32 minutes, and it feels like we've been waiting for that big fight. But the big fights, they kind of took place right in front of our eyes. souL landed a few Yamatos, landed a few EMPs. And as a Protoss, these kinds of games are a bit deceiving, because you think you're rich, you think you can have 24 gateways and warp in 24 Stalkers. You do that twice, you have no money left, and suddenly you're maxed out on just a terrible army. And you cannot expect to beat an army full of BCs and Ghosts with Stalkers and Archons. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, the recall over there makes me think that Hellraiser's thinking about, and the fact that he's still staying in this game at 75 supply to 189 makes me think he's thinking about trying to turn this into like a base trade. But that is going to be a very, very tough ask. I am surprised there are even still Marines on the map. I did not expect that there would be, but well, the problem is, Kev, all of those battle cruisers can still teleport to wherever these Stalkers actually start threatening.
I think these Stalkers are going to have a hard time winning the fight against the Ghosts and the Planetaries, to be honest. You know, if you land an EMP on these Stalkers, they have a hard time taking down a Planetary. I mean, souL still has a monstrous army, and he may still be a bit concerned, because it's hard to read games, especially in a stressful situation. souL obviously thinks he needs a victory here today to make sure he can make it into the playoffs. But Hellraiser is just completely out of steam. He's got no money in the bank, and all that he's got are a couple of Stalkers. What are you going to do? Blink into BCs? It seems like that is what he wants to do. Let me just tell you, this will not end well. Half of the Stalkers disappear immediately. There are a couple of Marauders with Stim on the ground as well, and just like that, souL takes the 1-0 lead. I don't know if you remember this. We're gonna move this thing away again, because this did not work out for my Protoss brethren. I want to pull the carrier a bit closer, but it felt that Hellraiser really expected souL to do something stupid and impatient. souL ain't doing that, and souL just kind of won. I feel like without doing a whole lot.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, Kev. I feel pretty confident in saying I don't think Hellraiser is going to try and summon one of those games again. That was like a little bit of a mutually assured decision for both sides. That like, yeah, let's both sit back and let's both macro up and let's both make decisions that are going to be extremely defensive in nature. I don't think that happens next game from Hellraiser.
No, but I don't think Hellraiser signed for this. I just more think that he thought his start was pretty good, and it was.
Yeah.
And then he probably expected souL to make some bio-tank push, and he's like, all right, I'm just going to make an army that's good against that, and then I'm going to crush it, and then you're stuck on 3 bases, and I'll just walk away with it. But souL never did that. souL just sat there, and that's something souL likes to do. It's 3 bases, and once the Terran stabilizes on 4 bases, that's where Hellraiser probably should have been like, all right, till here and no further. Because if it really turns into a you get 5 base, I get 5 base, you get 6 base, I get 6 base, that favors the Terran there, because the maxed out army of BCs, it's very, very, very hard to kill. I think maybe being very heavy on the Tempest is a good way, and then try to win the fight or close out the fight with a wave of those 22 gateways that Hellraiser was sitting on. But what you really can do is take like tradie fight with carriers, Tempest, a couple Colossus. Then you kind of lose the fight, but you wipe in 24 Stalkers just to push the Terran back. That's not good enough. It's really expensive to warp in 24 stalkers at once. If you do that, it needs to be damn sure to immediately win a fight and then continue your push forward. But Hellraiser was never able to do that, right? He was able to warp in these units to stabilize, and that's it. And that obviously means that your next maxed out is going to be a lot worse again, because you still have those emergency stalkers you never want to have in the first place.
The emergency stalkers are, it's like a bad feeling to feel like you have to warp those in, because you know how utterly useless they're going to feel right after the fight. As soon as both players get a somewhat sizable army back up again. There was a big gas bank available, and I'm curious what your thoughts were on the Archons being added in and that kind of stuff, because it's like, on one hand, you can see where the thought process is of the air army stacks up a lot. Maybe you force them to like split it up and they're not Yamatoing or doing all this stuff, or the Vikings have to move back. But we saw how utterly useless a lot of the time just like the small number of Archons ended up being.
I think if he didn't have 6,000 gas, he would have never made those Archons in the first place. I honestly think that's when Protoss players, and I know it for myself as well, you turn into a bit of a dreamer. You're like, Archons, pretty tanky. Maybe I can get a Guardian shield, then the battlecruiser doesn't do that much damage, and Vikings really clump up, and then you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get good shots off. But then in reality, you just get EMP'd, and you take a fight near that awkward little choke point at the bridge on the Romantic side, and it felt like they all died without getting a hit off. It's not that you really want them, it's more just that he had so much gas and few minerals. I honestly think at that point, though, it was already almost a lost game. Like, it's not that battle cruisers are super imbalanced, guys, but you need the right army, and then you need the right tempo and pressure to really make life hard on the Terran. If you just let them get 20 BCs, I rarely see that end well for a Protoss.
Very true. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat that army, just don't let them get there. Dan over here, guys, though, in game number 2, believe it or not, we finally made it to game 2. It is the blue Protoss player from Team Litecoin. He is Hellraiser.
In the bottom left side, we're looking at the main base of our Polish Terran, who was able to play his favorite kind of game in game 1. I think we'll have a more action-packed game 2 here on Blackburn. This man is up 1-0. This is souL. You know, Federaga, I know it's funny coming from me. I do actually think that Storm is very nice. It's not just against the Vikings, even though souL never had like 20 plus Vikings. I think the most amount of Vikings he had, well, at one moment he had, but that was before he really had a lot of PCs. But I still think it's nice to land Storm on these mechanical units since they don't regenerate, right? So even just like spamming a little Storm here, and BCs do clump up as well. It's not going to be the same effect as landing a Storm on Marines. But I still think it's nice, especially if a fight goes on for a long time, if it's near batteries and turrets and that kind of stuff. I think a few Storms are nice, but in Hellraiser's defense, I can also understand that he just believes he cannot land the Storm against the Terran with 20 orbitals and a lot of ghosts and enhanced shockwaves. And I do think there is a little argument to be made for that too.
Yeah, I think that was the big fear there, right? Is that every single fight, your entire army is just getting blanketed with EMPs. It didn't really feel like there was going to be a lot of opportunity for it. And what are you going to do? Put your High Templar in the Warp Prism as they have like 25 Vikings and 12 battle cruisers in the air ready to shoot it out of the sky like this. It doesn't really feel like there's a lot of amazing solutions. Maybe we just, you know what? Maybe we just need a like ground version of the Warp Prism. We need a little mobile transport truck.
The underground prism, what about that? You know, like that little Ultra they had a long time ago at BlizzCon, where it dives underneath the ground and then it charges.
But it carries units.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That actually sounds like a sick Zerg unit, right? It's like a short distance Nidus Worm where it does the burrow and then it pops out, but instead of doing damage and knocking everything around, it just pops out all of your units.
I love it.
That sounds pretty fun.
Now, we do have all the updates. By the way, you guys saw it on our screen here on the main stream. All the other players finished with 2 wins and 5 losses. It means that DNS beat Milky Cow. It means that Marine Lord beat Shadone. And it meant that Sarah beat Lambo. And that means that this game, does not matter other than for seeding purposes, and of course the $125 every player gets for winning the best of 3. So congrats to both souL and Hellraiser for already making it into the playoffs. Let's see who actually wins this final best of 3 between them, though, as souL is aiming for a Hellion drop here in game 2.
Yeah, interested to see how this one pans out, as SCV taking a very roundabout pathway back home just because it does not want to alert to anything that's happening. That starport very, very close to the natural expansion of Hellraiser right now. And Hellraiser about to send out a probe to the 3rd base, which is going to reveal the medevac and the Hellions. Is that enough time to start reacting to this?
Well, the medevac's taking an awkward route, but it actually pulls the units out of position. There's no shield battery. Close your eyes. A lot of probes are about to down. You can pick up the medevac. Oh no! What is this medevac micro? Fly to the main. Exactly, souL. You had the opportunity to go into the main. Oh my goodness, he's gonna get so many. I think he's gonna get like 16 in total. More.
Well, Kev, this really hurts, but on the bright side, after Hellraiser loses this game, he still advances to the playoff. This is an incredibly tough place to come back from after taking that much damage, guys.
Yeah, Hellraiser is down 8 workers in a PvT. He is still sending out his probe, so if he goes up to 3 bases, I will applaud that decision. It's gonna be very hard to play a macro game from here on out, but Hellraiser believes in the power of Chrono Boost. You know, this is a little fun fact, but if a scenario like this ever unfolds in your games, I actually think what Hellraiser should do now is take a look at his main. I think he should take the probes out of the assimilator, and he should temporarily only focus on his mineral income, because you really need minerals anyway to make use of any of the gas. And to mine this much gas right now, when you already have 300 gas in the bank, I think is a bit pointless. It would have been better to immediately try to saturate your main mineral line and then slowly but steady go back into gas mining.
I'm fully on board with that. Though the one situation I actually like where you don't do that is if you have a Templar Archives or something down, that is like this magical moment where you're like, all right, I've lost so many of my workers, but I don't need that many workers to mine gas, and I mostly just need gas for High Templars to make Archons and Storm. So that is one of my favorite little comeback mechanics in lowly little like Masters 2 League is if you lose all your workers but you have a Templar Archives, Kev, the game is not over yet.
That is true. It's just a little bit hard to have that 4 minutes into the game after losing 20 probes.
Well, maybe he could have. Yeah, this is going to be a very tough spot.
Yeah, Hellraiser did have Blink, but decided to not move out early on. And he's like, you know what? Since souL is not doing anything, maybe I should actually send my Stalkers out. Because souL will probably start marching out soon with a pretty terrifying army. And that's where you want to buy some time with your Stalkers. Can they maybe blink into the main base and kill the Cyclone? They don't even have to blink into the main. Nice blink there by Hellraiser. But he's going to need a whole lot more than that Fear Dragon. Because this Terran army that's moving out is pretty terrifying. I like this blink into the main. Oh, he's going to get him. Well done, Hellraiser.
That is a very big win because you're going to delay this push in, which is the really scary thing that souL was setting up for. He's going to maybe be able to get a tank, doesn't quite get it. And he might be able to get combat shields. That would be a really nice win as well. Now, it looks like souL's doing a great job splitting up this army. Oh, Hellraiser.
Well, he is. He just got all the Stalkers. Literally every single Stalker went down. And even though Hellraiser can